Democrats, welcome, and thank you for joining the Democratic Party of New Mexico for our monthly video newsletter, The Blue Opiñon. For the month of January, we're delighted to have a legislative preview from the top elected official of the New Mexico House of Representatives himself, Mr. Speaker Javier Martínez. First question has to do with what knowledge or experience did you acquire during your first session as Speaker that you think will be particularly helpful during this upcoming session?
Well, hello, Jessica, Chair Velasquez. Thank you for the invitation. A lot was learned last session. As you stated, last session was my very first session as Speaker. I didn't take over the Speaker position till noon on that first day of the 60-day session. So there was a lot to learn over those 60 days. Over the course of the last several months, we've really assembled an incredible team of leaders, staff, volunteers, chairs of committees, vice chairs of committees, committee membership. It's all part of a much larger project, right? And so one of the things I've learned is to allow that leadership to rise and allow those folks to do their work without too much interference from me, really necessarily. Also, as a longtime advocate and activist, who oftentimes had to view the proceedings from the outside and many times getting doors closed in my face, that's something that we've strived to change within the institution. We've really strived to change that more traditional culture of closing doors on people, of not allowing access, of not allowing information to flow out. We've really made it a point to ensure that people know what's happening. Try our best not to be debating controversial bills at 3 a.m. And also really hold accountable all of the parties involved in the legislative process. So, we set a tone of civility for the House that we haven't seen in a long time. We set that tone of civility in partly because we wanted to show that politics can be done differently and better in New Mexico. So all of that learning from last session and from the last few months of interim are what we're taking with us to this next session, and we're excited, and we expect a really productive session.
Thank you so much. When I travel nationally, Mr. Speaker, I want you to know my fellow state party chairs from across the country are rather jealous of the scenario we have here in New Mexico because, number one, our legislature is very accessible and transparent and open, and we're under Democratic leadership consistently, thanks to the hard work of people like you and our entire House caucus team. New Mexico's legislature has alternating 30 and 60-day sessions. So can you explain to our viewers some of the major differences between those two sessions, maybe in what the work is before you, what it's like to even work in the roundhouse during a 30-day session versus a 60-day session?
Well, great question, and I especially appreciate the statement earlier about running around in circles, because literally for your viewers who may not be from New Mexico, our capital really is a round building. So you can find yourself running around in circles if you're not careful. So under our Constitution, during in the odd even years, we have a 60-day session where really anything and everything can be introduced. Obviously, the state budget is always the primary goal of each session, but in a 60-day session, any other policy priority can be introduced, and it is considered germane. In the even-numbered years, 30-day sessions, only the budget is considered germane, and whatever the governor puts on their call. So we can still consider any policy issue not related to the budget, so long as the governor puts it on their call. So for this year, obviously the budget is first and foremost. That's the one thing per the Constitution that we're here to do. We do know that the governor has a host of different issues that she will be putting on the call for us to consider. And then, there are other policy areas that legislators can work on so long as they are substantially budget related. Now, a 30-day session, obviously half the time, which seems like, hey, it'll be a breeze. It'll go by very quickly. Well, it will go by very quickly, but it will be like drinking from a fire hose. This is going to be my fifth, I think, 30-day session. And I got to tell you, those 60-day sessions sometimes feel a little easier than the 30-day sprints.
And since it is a budget session, let's take a moment here to talk about the state budget. And so I always think about budgets as being a reflection of our values and our priorities.
The budget itself actually starts its development in April or May of that year. So we have interim committees that meet over the course of the year: Health and Human Services, Courts, Corrections and Justice, Water and Natural Resources, Legislative Education Study Committee, also the Legislative Finance Committee. It is that Legislative Finance Committee that starts to build the budget. They hold a series of hearings over those next months, between April and December, hearing from state agencies, hearing from the public, hearing from policy experts. We analyze the prior year's budget. We look at spending trends. We have a pretty data-driven analyses that happens for each of the agencies. And out of that come a set of budget recommendations that the LFC, which is made up of appointed members from the Senate and the House, bipartisan, that group then votes on what we call the Legislative Finance Committee budget framework. The committee voted unanimously to endorse that spending plan. Now that that spending plan has been endorsed, once we start session in January, that will become the framework that the House Appropriations and Finance Committee will begin to work out of. At that point, once again, we'll bring all the state agencies to the table. We'll hear their request again. Oftentimes, their requests will change from what they presented in July to what they present in January. Obviously, things change, dynamics change. Sometimes there are leadership changes within those agencies, and so you'll have some variations. But for the most part, what was voted on by the LFC in December is what will more or less hold, with a lot of negotiation happening between the executive and then, of course, the Senate, because once the House passes the budget, which we have to do roughly about halfway through the session, then the Senate gets to work on it and massage it and hear from state agencies once again, up until the last few days of session. Now, something that I really want to highlight, and this is probably the thing that I'm most proud of in my speakership, is the way we have changed the appropriations and finance process from the House side. So for the first time ever, we've now allowed, during the House Appropriations and Finance Committee hearings, for public comment. So people who come from all over the state to say, hey, mental behavioral health investments are important for me and my community for these reasons. That has been invaluable for our committee to hear, because it really helps put a face, a name, a place to these spreadsheets, right? That oftentimes can seem like they're just these sheets of paper with numbers on them. Well, at the end of the day, there's a human being, a child, a senior, somebody in need of critical health care that depends on the decisions we make as a legislature. Under my chair, Nathan Small, Vice Chair Meredith Dixon, and the entire membership of House Appropriations and Finance Committee, which is one of the most diverse committees you'll find, from race to gender, from geography to professional experience to personal experience, that committee is helping shape the budget. Now, I would be remiss too if I didn't mention the incredible work of other leaders in other committees in shaping that budget. As you know, education is the biggest budget item every single year. That's why the chair and vice chair of the education committees also play a critical role in helping build that budget over the course of the interim and over the course of the session. Same thing with folks on the energy and environment committee, same thing with the folks on the health committee.
I would really love for you to take a few minutes to talk about this dynamic and diverse group of people, what the caucus actually is, and what you think makes this group of legislators so special or so fun to work with, so effective.
You know, we have, I think we have the best legislative caucus in the country. We have a caucus that is unlike any other one in the country. It is the most diverse caucus in the entire country, made up majority by women, women of color, a lot of moms with young kids, right? So budget decisions are now a little different, right? Because you've got a little kid in pre-K or you got a little kid on the way. Um, you know, people caring for their seniors, whether it's parents or grandparents, right? The caucus itself is diverse in every sense, from Gallup to Chaparral, from San Miguel County, Taos. As you know, we basically run the city of Albuquerque. At this point, we've got one sole Republican left in the House up in the far northeast sides. But it is a caucus that I'm really proud of. And look, my leadership team is incredible, right? Starting with the majority leader who brings years of experience to the table, Leader Gail Chasey, our whip, Representative Rena Sipansky out of Santa Fe, our caucus chair, Ray Lara, who represents the southern border with Mexico, Sunland Park area. And as I mentioned earlier, all of our committee chairs, right? You've got folks like Andres Romero, who is an active teacher. I mean, I think he's probably teaching as we record this interview right now, high school history teacher at Atlisco Heritage. You know, you have Chris Chandler, who is just a phenomenal attorney and such a bright legal mind. I mentioned Dayhawk McGill earlier, who is a space lawyer. How many space lawyers do we know? I know of one, and that's her. She's leading our transportation and public works and infrastructure work for the legislature. I can go on and on and on about the incredible work of all of these leaders. You know, the job of speaker can feel really lonely at times, right? Because most decisions, if not all decisions, are going to come through me. But I know that I've got an incredible team of leaders who are supporting my leadership and whose leadership I support actively. And our 45-member strong majority is only going to increase in the next election cycle, not because of partisan politics, not because of the best campaign operation you've ever seen, but because we are delivering results for people. And ultimately, that's what matters, right? If you are showing up for people, if you're hearing their concerns, if you're seeing who they are, if you are meeting them where they're at, that's what it takes to earn the votes to win elections.
So let's go back. Now that we're entering into session and we've heard a little bit about the key players here, what are a few of the key priorities or top goals that you and the House Democrats will be focused on in this upcoming session? Of course, we've got the budget. Maybe there are a few little pieces in the budget that are of particular interest to you and other Democratic members of the caucus, or maybe there are a few things on the call that will be priorities. So we'd love to hear more, sir.
Yeah, well, you know, education is paramount to a lot of the work that we do and for the long-term prospects of the state. That's why one of the key pieces of the budget we are proposing is the Tribal Education Trust Fund as part of the Yazi Martinez remedy framework. Having a sustainable and consistent source of funding for those particular communities will be a game changer in the long run. That's one of the things that I think people should really take stock in and pay close attention to. Of course, early childhood education will continue to be the shining bright star that it is across the country. We now have more or less a fully funded early childhood system, the only one in the country. We are the only state in the country to guarantee access to early childhood education in its constitution for every child in New Mexico. That is something that we will continue to invest in and improve upon and build over the course of this budget year. We will continue to work on climate resiliency work. There will be a lot of work through the tax code to incentivize for working families, for working people, the purchase of things like solar panels for their home to bring down their energy cost, of electric vehicles to bring down the cost of driving to and from work, to and from school, as well as innovations within the energy sector, such as geothermal and energy storage, which we know the technology is there. It's just not quite economically feasible in many cases. So this is an area where the state can step up and do a lot of good work. Of course, there will continue to be a lot of work around public safety. Democrats are not afraid to tackle the issue of public safety. In fact, Democrats are the party of public safety. That's why we've made the investments in early childhood. That's why we've made the investments in mental behavioral health. That's why this budget, we will continue to build our housing trust funds to ensure that every family in New Mexico has access to these services. That's why in some of our communities, there is a crime problem. It's because of generations of divestment. Democrats will continue to show up to ensure that we provide what families need to feel safe in their community, and also that we hold criminal actors accountable for their crimes. That's something that Democrats are not afraid to take head on. And our caucus and our legislature will continue that good work that we started last year, really that we started 6 years ago, but that we really took to stop last year with bills like the organized retail crime bill, which is another one that is a national model for tackling that particular issue. Lastly, we will continue the work of economic diversification. It is no secret that New Mexico is the second largest producer of oil and gas in the country. That is a double-edged sword. The resources that we gain from those extractive industries have allowed us to build an early childhood system that is a model for the rest of the country. At the same time, we know climate change is real and climate change is here. We saw it in our northern communities, this past year. We've seen it all across the state in the form of drought, in the form of wildfires, in the form of air pollution, etc. We will continue to do the work, the hard work, the unpredictable work of economic diversification. House Democrats have led on innovative industries like the cannabis industry, which is up and running, well over $400 million a year in revenue. Last year, House Democrats, under the leadership of Weep Stefanski, passed the Creative Industries bill that creates the Creative Industries Division within Economic Development Department. There are things like the Opportunity Investment Fund, Enterprise Investment Fund, which was created by Vice Chair Dixon and former Speaker Egoff, I want to say 2 years ago, which is now responsible for a ton of developments across the state. I mean, Democrats are delivering for the people, right? And we will continue to do that this year through the budget and through the different budget priorities that we'll tackle on. Lastly, we know the governor has really led courageously on the issue of gun safety. We know that there will be a number of gun safety bills on the call that we will tackle head on. We will not stand by as our children are shooting each other, killing each other. We will do everything in our power to make sure our kids are safe and our communities are safe. And so that'll be on the call, and that'll be something that we'll be working on as well.
Fantastic. And Mr. Speaker, thank you so much for taking a little bit of time to also look back. And I think sometimes we forget to focus on our accomplishments as well, because of course, we're paying attention to the next bill, the next piece of legislation, the next session that's coming. What are some accomplishments that you think made a big impact on the lives of everyday New Mexicans, or even if there's a particular piece of legislation that you personally take a lot of pride in? We'd love to hear about that.
Wow, that's another great question. But this is all a team effort. Three priorities that I'm very proud of. The first one is ensuring that New Mexico remains a safe space to be a transgender person, particularly a transgender child, as well as abortion. In these last 18 months or so, we've seen this cascade of horrible, hateful legislation trickling through states after the Dobbs decision that really have targeted people for who they are and for the healthcare choices they make. New Mexico is a safe haven for those communities, and we will continue to be so. And keep in mind, New Mexico is majority people of color. We are a very Catholic state. Many of us, Hispanics, Latinos, Chicanos, whatever you want to call yourselves. And we are also a place where women can access reproductive health care and transgender children can live to be themselves. Number two, over the course of the last 6-7 years, we've made it a point to transform our tax code from a tax code that was written for corporations by corporations, and we've transformed it into a tax code that is for working people by working people. We have one of the top 3 working families tax credits in the entire country. That means that working people, people who work for a living, people in the middle class, every single year have a very substantial and generous tax credit that they can reinvest in their family and in the local economy. Number 3, New Mexico is the only state in the country with a constitutional right to early childhood. That was a 12-year fight. Long after we're gone, Madam Chair, that piece of legislation will show itself to be the single most important policy this state has ever passed, and it will yield results for generations to come. Those 3, I think, are huge. Those are the things that Democrats are accomplishing for the people. When Democrats vote, Democrats win, and Democrats deliver.
So if you'd like to find out more, or if you'd like to tune in even to watch the sessions online, check out nmlegis.gov. So thank you all so much for being here with us today. Mr. Speaker, thank you for taking the time to kind of paint us a picture of the work that the New Mexico House of Representatives does on